not a lot of value in risking personal safety from workers or farmers or whoever that may be in exchange for a bad guess at inventory. That's a bad trade-off at the end of the day.
Welcome, everyone, to AgTech with Andrew. I'm your host, Andrew Bodden, and I'm joined today with Ben Allen, CEO of BinSentry. Welcome, Ben.
Hello, Andrew. Thanks for having me on.
My pleasure. So, Ben, before we get into a little bit of what BinSentry is all about, tell us a little bit about your background. You work in AgTech. You were with Agritrend Trimble. You've done stuff with Indigo Ag as well. Tell us a little bit about your knowledge on this technology side of things.
Yeah, well, so I grew up in Davenport, Iowa, went to undergrad at Iowa State, so I'm a Cyclone, and grew up in a brokerage house. My dad was one of the first guys to do hedging for family farms in the United States. I ran a large contracting farming operation for grain production for a number of years, and then went back to grad school, got an MBA, and left agriculture and really just went into high tech. Worked at Advanced Micro Devices, the computer chip maker in semiconductor and other software companies. And then a mentor of mine from my farming days called and said, why don't you put your farm and ag background career together with your tech career and do ag tech? And I thought that was a great idea. So that's where I've been for the last decade or more. And, since I've gotten into ag tech in my career, I led sales and marketing at Agritrend, which we sold to Trimble, and then I was part of the team that led their global relaunch of their precision agricultural software in 2016. Spent over 4 years at Indigo Ag as their SVP of global market dev, starting up new business units and new geographies. And then I came to BinSentry a little over 4 years ago to help scale that business as well. So I've been blessed with some fun work.
That's awesome. Obviously, great background there. When you kind of look at to where you are now with BinSentry, what attracted you to BinSentry? Because kind of it's inventory management. There's kind of not a lot of kind of sexy to it, but obviously something that's pretty important.
Yeah, a lot of ag isn't sexy, unfortunately, but it is important, and I do really enjoy the people and the technology challenges. At BinSentry, the technology really drew me in. My grandfather in Winterset, Iowa, used to work in a feed mill, and he would recognize the way everybody changes or checks inventory today, like it's still the same that it was in the 50s and 60s. So that's a challenge. We have a labor challenge. Can't find enough good people out in the country to do the work. And sending good people up ladders to peer into dark bins to try and guess what's in them, that's a bad idea. And our tech is uniquely good. I believe it's the best in the world at solving this challenge, and it needs to be solved so that we can take better care of the animals and keep the people off ladders. And I got excited about that. There's a lot of obvious value there, and it's rare when you can increase safety and animal health and decrease costs at the same time. That's a winning formula. So I jumped into that one in the deep end pretty quickly.
Wow, that obviously makes a lot of sense. So you talked a little bit about kind of the basics of doing those checks and climbing the ladders and checking inside the bins. Obviously, there's lots of risks there. Talk a little bit about the risks that that are for the people that maybe not be aware, and then give us an idea of kind of the percentage of farms that are still doing that traditional way.
Yeah, happy to. So, if you're growing animals in a barn, so confinement production, chickens, turkeys, pigs, largely some dairy work, then you've got feed bins. And feed bins are these big, metal silos that the only way to guess what's in them, people thump the sides of them to try to avoid the ladders, or they climb the ladders and peer into a dark hole. All of that is just not accurate, I guess is the kind way to say it. It's guessing. And it's the best option most people have had. When you think about the global animal industry, 90% of the planet eats meat, and meat consumption continues to go up year on year on a global basis. And almost all of those feed bins globally are being checked manually today. You and I are recording this in July of 2026, and we watch over 65,000 feed bins daily. And that's a small percentage of what is available globally. It's probably over 10% of what's available in the United States. We've been growing pretty rapidly in the US and Canada. But we've got a long way to go before we keep people off ladders, because these ladders are 15 to 30 feet tall. You slip and miss a rung, it's going to be a bad day if you're lucky.
Yeah,
So
for sure.
there's not a lot of value in risking personal safety from workers or farmers or whoever that may be in exchange for a bad guess at inventory. That's a bad trade-off at the end of the day.
Yeah, for sure. So let's talk then a little bit about kind of what the technology is that the BinSentry is kind of put out, and how it's being used, and then tell me a little bit about obviously the safety side of things, and really let's talk about the cost differences that we're seeing, as far as when you look at running out of feed or just managing that side of things.
Yeah. Well, the technology itself, and this matters because, some people will say, why has it taken, until the last few years to get people off ladders? Why was this so hard? Well, it's hard because feed has consistency and moisture issues. So if a pile of feed is rarely the same shape. If you have sand or gravel, they have what you call a common angle of repose. A sand pile, if it's the same size of granule, is always the same shape, with few exceptions. So you can cheat mathematically if you've got a very consistent product. But with animal feed, moisture, consistency, recipe, and formulation changes mean that it's not always the same shape. Especially in feed bins that drop from the middle at rat holes, or it can hang up to the side, or, feed can stick to one side. It's all kinds of different shapes. So we actually have to use high-end Swiss time-of-flight cameras. What we do is we illuminate the interior of the bin with a high-powered LED light, and then the computer chip on the time-of-flight camera captures every single photon of light that bounces around inside the bin and comes back. And then we use artificial intelligence software to take all of that data, those thousands of data points, and turn it into an animation so that we can map the entire surface of the interior of the bin. That's what makes us so accurate. We are within a percentage point or two of scales, and significantly cheaper than installing scales. So it's information you can trust. It works. And when tech is good, it feels like magic. And when you can open your phone or a laptop and magically see exactly what's inside of a big metal bin at any barn that you're censored up on, that feels like magic, and it's a huge improvement. So it means that you can be sitting on your couch and need to check something, or you can be running errands and need to check something. You don't have to go to that barn. You don't have to climb that ladder. It's significantly easier day or night, good weather, bad weather. It doesn't matter. The talent we have out there in agriculture has better things to do than check inventory.
Yeah, that's for sure. And obviously, I saw a safer way of doing that. I've been doing our AgTech conference for 10, 15 years. I think that's when you and I first connected. And when we have seen a lot of tech come and go. How do we get to the point where the farming community says, I'm buying into this AI or this technology, and being confident that it's going to be something that's going to be beneficial?
Yeah, well, it does really matter. I mean, farmers tend to be fairly tech forward if they believe that something works well. And I think one of the best case studies to prove that point is AutoSteer. When AutoSteer came out in the mid 90s, not cheap tech, but pretty important tech to make sure you're not overlapping spray or seeding lines and straightening things out. Fuel's expensive, time on the tractor is expensive, seed is expensive. And so being exact made a lot of sense to guys, and they could feel it and touch it. They could go to a neighbor's farm and get in a tractor and see how good it worked. And that tech worked really well, and it was adopted extremely fast. And so when farmers do see the ROI that you referenced, Andrew, they do move fairly quickly. Our model is slightly different in that we don't sell to farmers. We sell to either the feed mill that they buy from, and feed mills, retail feed mills, will pay to censor up their customers' bins so that the customer doesn't have to call in. So it provides a higher level of service to the farm customer, and it reduces transportation costs for the feed mill at the same time. So as a retail feed mill, you reduce your transportation costs and improve service levels to your farm customers. That's a really rare win-win. And so we have a lot of really large retail feed millers that do that. Trow Nutrition in Canada is rolling us out nationwide, and is really excited about that. There's a press release from a couple weeks ago about that. We also, when it's contract meat production, which there's a lot of company owned but also contract animal production. The protein company, like Wayne Sanderson Farms, is a well-known partner of ours. They pay for the solution and put it out on the barns as well. So we don't sell into individual farms. We sell to the corporations or the companies that work with all of those farms to streamline the logistics and the supply chain. Because on a farm by farm basis, it's hard to have the volumes necessary to afford the technology. On a system basis, the technology pays for itself in single digit months extremely quickly.
Wow.
Because they're running a lot of trucks, they're running feed mills. There's a lot of implications. So you get the safety improvements, you get the animal health improvements, but you get a lot of logistical savings, and you avoid all those. In the feed business, there's these emergency orders of, oops, it's Sunday night and I'm out of feed somehow. Somebody's got to roll a truck. Nobody wants to roll that truck on a Sunday night, but we do it all Sunday, every Sunday across the nation and across the world. And that's just not optimal. That's a really expensive truck to send on a Sunday when you have an oops. So, we get away from a lot of those expensive situations.
Yeah, for sure. That makes a big difference. So can you kind of fill us in a little bit about kind of what you said a quick ROI on that stuff. What kind of savings are you seeing? And we're like, as we get more adoption down this way, it's going to have a pretty big impact. What's your thought there?
Well, we did a study with Hanor Pork, which is a top producer in the United States. We looked at over 200,000 head in 195 groups of hogs, and we found the feed conversion ratio dropped by up to 7 points. That's huge money. That's a step function change in feed conversion ratios, or FCR, that we haven't seen in quite a while. People are investing in genetics, big money for obvious reasons, nutrition, big money for obvious reasons. But it turns out that right now the operational improvements of being able to deliver feed at the right time to the right place, that's where the biggest money savings is. And this technology allows you to do that. It's exactly similar to what happened in grocery stores, when point of sale systems came in, the little scanners that, grab the barcodes. Before that, a grocery store manager would pick up the phone and say, I need a pallet of Coca-Cola. And now Coca-Cola is dialed into the system. They see the barcodes that are getting scanned, and they've already got trucks rolling. Nobody's making that phone call. Well, that's called vendor managed inventory as a strategy. If you've got that demand signal, that works really well. And so, we get to bring that savings to agriculture and animal feed in ways that it's struggled to have it in the past.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like there's nothing, you can't really think of anything negative about going down this path. Obviously, there's an investment that's there, but it sounds like it's paid off pretty quickly. So you've been with the company, you said, for about 4 years. Was there any aha moments that you can share where someone said, wow, this is, there's no reason not to go down this path?
Yeah, when Wayne Sanderson did a press release from the office of the CEO. Now, Wayne Sanderson, for those that don't know, is the 8th largest poultry company in the planet. They produce a little over 1 billion chickens a year. And their CEO did a press release about their excitement to take on our technology in every barn that they serve. That became pretty obvious all of a sudden that, hey, there's something here. There's a lot of money here for a large producer. And that was game changing for us as a company. Now we work with a lot of big names, and We install 50 to 100 sensors every 24 hours in the United States and Canada. So we roll trucks, we install hardware, we take care of all of that for everybody. And that's, the scale at which everybody's taking it on is brand new. And so we're not really a little startup anymore. We're a bigger group, and we serve bigger companies. And that's something we're really proud of. We've kind of made it through the risk of a startup, and we're starting to scale this thing.
That's great. When you look at kind of the way that these ecosystems connect together, do you see a future where everything is intertwined, where there's just automatic triggers through all the different systems that exist?
It's a great question. So BinSentry is a native AI company. We were founded as an artificial intelligence company. The investors that put money in us 6 years ago, we were their very first artificial intelligence check that they ever wrote as an investor. And so, we're deeply into artificial intelligence, which means we can work with bigger data sets and move calculations faster than people that are using older methods. The data sets and the big data, it's bigger than ever before, and that's what the sensors are about. When a sensor is installed in a feed bin or an industrial silo, we get an always-on data stream. Multiple times a day, we're getting data from that sensor and understanding what's going on. And then the artificial intelligence works with that data to see when there's problems and trigger text messages or SMS, WhatsApp messages for our Brazil customers. And it just shows up, and we cut down on all the time of somebody having to figure out a problem and then call who the person is in charge of that problem. The computer does all that. We are automating through the software and the data management multiple points of decision making in the supply chain, where the computers just make really fast decisions that are less prone to error than humans punching things into Excel or manual data entry. That is speeding up extremely quickly. We've been hiring a new software engineer about every 20 days
Wow.
for the last 6 months. And that is actually speeding up for us. So, not only are we using a lot of AI tools write 97, 98% of our software code today, but we're adding people very aggressively. And it means we put out software 3 to 4 times faster than we did just 18 months ago. It's really pretty stunning. And when the data is always on and we're installing sensors every day, the things we can do with it are very exciting. There's just more money to be saved. We need to take the Excel out of managing the logistics. We need to take the people off the ladders and the guessing at inventories. And when you do that, you can get very dialed in the way that animal feed and animal production hasn't had the ability previously. It's not they don't want to, it just hasn't really worked until now. Now that it does, it makes pretty obvious arguments about why you save a ton of money over the manual, human-driven processes.
So, we talked about tell me a little bit about the installation process, how long that takes, how complicated it is, what do people need if they need to want to go down this path, what's required?
Well, we do it all. So we manage that. When a company says we want your technology, we get locations for where we're going to install on feed bins. We can install a device in about 15 minutes. We don't have to cut into the bin. We don't have to, our feed bin monitors are solar powered, battery backup, cellular connectivity, and we're on the industrial cellular band to support sensors. So you can be out at a farm site or a barn site that it's difficult to make a phone call on, and we can still transmit data just fine. Because it's a different cell frequency. We can jam, over 100 devices every 24 hours when we need to. So our record installation within the last 6 months was, I think, 3,700 devices in 30 days. And we expect to eclipse that within the next 4 months. We set new records about once a quarter because there's been a lot of demand for the product. So we take care of installation. The customer doesn't have to worry about that. And if a device goes down, we come and flip it out for free. It's lifetime warranty on the service because it's a subscription. You don't buy the hardware. You subscribe to the service of the hardware plus the software plus our service techs. That's all included, so that So it's taken care of. You can't really look at a customer who's got labor challenges and say, we need your people to work for us or on our technology. That dog doesn't hunt.
For
So we
sure.
take care of it for people.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Good peace of mind for sure when you're going down that path to know that you've got that support all the time. Where do you see? You said you're working with you're adding new programmers all the time. What's the next step here for BinSentry?
Well, we've started making a lot of progress and installing a lot of devices at industrial sites. So feed mills themselves. We have a much bigger, heavier unit we call ProSense HD that is safety rated to be inside of corn bins, big industrial corn bins. We've got some grain elevators. We've got dozens of feed mills and milling sites that are now putting those into the ingredient side of the mill, or the big storage tanks at the elevators or ports. And that's because those big industrial sites take inventory the same way a farm would at a feed bin. They climb ladders and they peer into a dark hole. Now, the one thing they do differently is they drop a weighted line down into that hole, and then they measure the tape, how many feet of tape have disappeared. But that's not ideal. It's not exactly accurate. And so our sensors there take readings every 15 minutes. Now, that's a bigger sensor. We cut it and mount it into the lid of the bin, and we have an electrician come out and power it. So it's wired in, but it's always on inventory. Again, big safety gains, but exact inventory means that there aren't surprise outages at a mill. They know exactly what they've got to work with and what's leaving the tanks when it's leaving. So we're really excited about that. And when you can see all the feed being consumed at the barns and all the ingredients moving through the supply chain up top, then the software and the AI can automate all of the spreadsheets that are being used in between those two data points. As you asked about earlier, what's going to automate? Most of it is going to automate. The negotiation on pricing will not automate.
Yeah.
I don't know how to do that, but trucking schedules and delivery plans and orders going through the system and flags about what's out of bounds and shouldn't be, that's all automating at light speed right now. And,
I'd
and
imagine
it's working at scale. I mean, we're doing that at dozens of mills.
the logistical savings alone has got to be just massive. That's awesome, and being able to predict all these things down the road, so you're always up and ready to roll. I guess, Ben, before we say goodbye, is there anything that we didn't touch on that you maybe want to share with our audience?
Well, I'm really excited for the chance to talk to you and your audience. I really appreciate it. So thank you, Andrew. I think that, if there's anything we like to remind people about, is that we are extremely well funded. We have patented intellectual property. So it's unique what we can deliver out in the country for our customers. And we've got the largest engineering base. We've got the largest service tech base in the nation by a lot. And so we can serve large customers effectively today and do, tens of thousands of sensors running 24 hours a day. So people don't have to wonder whether or not this is ready. Like we passed the "is this ready" years ago, not too many years ago, like 2 or 3, but we're ready at scale, and we're scaling very quickly, and the money is fairly obvious once you dig into it. So, like I said, I really appreciate you giving me the chance to talk to you and your audience.
No, my pleasure. I just one question I forgot to ask you: data management. Where does all that data sit? Because that's obviously a security issue.
Yeah. I mean, we are very cognizant of security, and we're very good at that. So we do cloud data storage. We're very effective at that. Our data partners are very effective at that. So we have been very successful at keeping our customers happy and comfortable and confident in what we do to protect their data every day. So it's we have a very large data set, the biggest in human history for feed consumption at the point of consumption. We're aggressive about protecting that as well. So great question.
That's awesome. Yeah, I mean, AgTech has always been who controls the data, right? That's been the scariest part of it, for everyone, I guess. I guess one last thing is we talked a lot about the North American market or the Canadian and U.S. market. Where do you see the biggest growth then on as far as opportunities?
So we announced almost a year and a half ago now a unique deal with Cargill to enter Brazil. Brazil is one of the fastest growing ag markets on the planet right now. Some of the political issues in North America have pushed certain export buyers to Brazil, and so the Brazil market has benefited from some of that turmoil. We're very active in Brazil. We're just starting to look into the EU, certain countries there and parts of Asia. Anywhere where you see a lot of protein production, we're interested in going there. We're excited about that. And protein production, meat production continues to increase globally year on year as income comes up, especially in developing countries. So, we're excited about that.
Perfect. Well, again, Ben, I want to really thank you for your time today and sharing all that is BinSentry and about your background. We'll certainly keep an eye out on anything new that's coming out and look forward to seeing your growth. On behalf of Farms.com, I'm Andrew Bodden, and we look forward to seeing you again soon.